Well, welcome along, everybody, to Brands Hatch for the second weekend of racing in the 2023 Focus Cup. We had two races at Donington Park. Well, this is round 3 of the championship. The cars having qualified this morning, and, well, you do get 30 points if you qualify on pole position towards the championship. It's exactly the same points that you get if you qualify on pole than you do if you win the race. So there's already 30 championship points heading in the direction of Jonathan Baker. 26 for second, 23, 21, 20, 19th for sixth, and so it carries on. That's the format for qualifying. It's exactly the same come the racing. So Jonathan Baker having qualified on pole position. Lewis Clark will be alongside. We might be able to bring you the grid as well as they head off there on their formation lap. So Jonathan Baker, the number 10 car, having qualified on pole. Number 17 car of Lewis Clark sitting there in second position. Simon Waugh, with a new livery on his car, was third quickest in qualifying, and fourth was the number 81 car of Ian Mitchell. Nicole Drought, the young Irish lady who joins the championship for this year, is there in 5th place, and it's Sean Reynolds who's there in 6th place. Simon Watts is 7th, ahead of Gary Mitchell, who's there in 8th place, with Mark McCann in 9th position. And completing the top 10 will be Simon Walton. So there we go. Jonathan Baker, Lewis Clark, Simon Waugh, Ian Mitchell. Nicole Drought there on row number 3. Makes her debut in the championship alongside Sean Reynolds. And then it's Simon Watson, Gary Mitchell there on row number 4. Row 5 of the grid, Mark McCann and Simon Walton, alongside Greg Saunders and Rob Stark, who are there on row 6 of the grid. Ian Graham and Abby Walton make up row number 7. And the final row of the grid is number 21, Sarah Hall, and Luke Scrubby, who line up there in 15th and 16th places, respectively. So the cars on their final formation lap, just trying to build a bit of temperature into the control Nankang tyres that they all run. And we can try and build up as much temperature into them as they can. All of the cars are powered by identical 2-litre TDCI, 135 brake horsepower diesel engines being driven through a 6-speed manual gearbox, and this is for the model year of Ford Focus 2007 through to 2010, producing around about 250 pounds-feet of torque, so as you would expect from a diesel engine, nice and torquey. But unlike most race cars where you tend to want to rev them, the petrol engine ones, to get the performance out, and particularly something like a Honda VTEC engine, well, of course, you know, a Ford diesel engine, very different. You want to keep it in that torque band, which means that very different way of driving. Earlier gear changes, keep it there in the torque band, and that is what we've seen, and certainly Andy Godfrey do best at Donington Park. He's not out this weekend, but he had a third and a second at Donington Park, so he leads the championship standings coming into this one. Ian Mitchell was second, another absentee from this one. Sean Reynolds was third, but he did take a win in the first race of the weekend, but he lines up 6th on the grid for this one, so he's left himself a little bit of work to do. John Baker is the man who's there on pole position, and John was not in the top 6 in either of the races at Donington Park, so he scored 17 points in race number 2, which would put him 8th. So that's his best result of the weekend, whether it be race 1, race 2, or even qualifying. Final car on the grid just coming into position now, and we will get this third round of the championship underway for what is scheduled to be a short and sharp affair, 15 minutes. Green flags waved at the back, revs begin to rise. John Baker in the blue car gets a good start, but not quite as good as Lewis Clark from the outside of the front row of the grid. It's a good start also from Ian Mitchell on row number 2. It's going to be Lewis Clark that takes the lead as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. John Baker's got the inside line. Can he squeeze his way through? No, it is going to be the car of Ian Mitchell was really good off the start, wasn't he? He really got the drop as well as they charged their way through and up towards Druids for the first time. It looks as though it was Lewis Clark that had picked up the lead of the race. So there towards the tail end of the field is Sarah Hall. Now out of the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend and working their way along the Cooper Straight. Everybody's safely through the first couple of corners, and as they head down to the bottom of the Cooper Straight, that looks like Simon Walton that's in the lead actually. His car was identified as being the number 9 car for this one, so we'll have to wait and see, but I think there's been a change of number subsequently issued. So yeah, it is Lewis Clark that's there in the lead of the race, with everybody queuing up behind him at the moment. So down the hill they'll go. Lewis Clark leads the way. Right behind him is the blue car that is trying to hound him round, which is going to be Jonathan Baker, but at the moment it is Lewis Clark with that good start from pole position that leads the way. I'm wondering if Simon Walton took the start for that one, or whether he has vacated his car. They usually have a couple of spare cars just in case, but Lewis Clark leading the way. John Baker there in second place. Third place at the moment is going to be Ian Mitchell after his quick start. The Donington Park race winner, number 777, which is Sean Reynolds, trying to thread his way through the order if he can. But at the moment, he is going to be down in something like 6th position. So down the straight and in towards Clearways and Clark Curve there will come, with Lewis Clark leading the way at this stage and looking to see if he can get any sort of break away from the pack. But for the moment, early stages of this one, that's not happening at all, because John Baker is right there, Jonathan Baker, then Ian Mitchell, and just off Ian Mitchell is a car that sits there in 4th position, the newly liveried car in the hands of Simon War for this weekend, matching the family livery of the Ginetta that they've also got. And here on the overlap coming out of Paddock Hill Bend, Jonathan Baker is looking for the lead of the race. He's got the inside line, might be able to sneak his way through and ahead of Lewis Clark. And now that the door is open, Ian Mitchell is trying to carve his way through as well. But for Lewis Clark, outside line at Druids meets inside line at Graham Hill Bend. Can he hang on to it? They are still side by side through Graham Hill Bend. Ian Mitchell looks to try and get better drive coming off the corner, and they are still side by side as they get towards the Cooper Straight. So the race leader down to 2nd, clinging on to try and hang on to it, and might be down to 3rd if he's not careful. So brilliant stuff in the early stages of the Ford Focus Cup, round 3 of the championship. But that good start for Lewis Clark, whilst it might have netted him the lead for the first few laps, he's in 2nd, but under this enormous pressure now from Ian Mitchell, who's got the inside line. And I think the pole sitter, the man started from the outside of the front row grid and took up the early lead of the race. Is he down to 3rd? No, not quite. Sweeps across the nose of the Powerflex car, hangs on to 2nd.
I think that was probably a wise move, backing out, going into Hawthorns, going side by side through there. It doesn't usually end particularly well unless you one person yields, but yielding before the corner is probably better for the remainder of the race, still with 11 minutes and 40 seconds to go.
And off, I'm afraid. Donington Park winner is off, and that's Sean Reynolds into the barriers on the exit of Stirling's, and it looks as though that's been quite a thump into the barriers there. The safety car is already on standby on the Cooper Straight, and with 11.5 minutes to go, we're going safety car, I'm afraid. No choice but to do that, because he's had an off. Whilst he's out of the car and fine, the car's stranded in a dangerous position, and we of course have got some tyre barriers that need replacing. Yeah,
of course, the same thing again as we had in a previous support race. Once the barriers cars go into the barriers, you need to make sure that the car is retrieved, and also, of course, all of the road furniture, barriers and safety equipment is all ready to potentially take another car.
Yeah, so hopefully it will be a reasonably short safety car period. They'll get the car dragged out of the barriers without too much of a problem. Then I just need to make sure that they secure the circuit furniture back as it should be. So Sean was straight away out of the car, but that's an enormous disappointment for the man who mustered 2 top 6 finishes at Donington Park, a win in the first race, 6th in the second race, and was lying 3rd in the championship standings coming into this weekend. Championship leader Andy Godfrey not here. I said Ian Mitchell wasn't here. Of course he is. Ian Mitchell is here because he qualified 4th. And then Sean Reynolds was lying 3rd in the championship. So disappointment that it's going to be 0 points for him in this one, I'm afraid. He'll get the points for qualifying, but that's not what he wants. He wants the points that you can scoop up in each of the 2 races as well. So he'll have to wait to race 2 to maybe gobble up a few more points.
Yeah, of course, points for all the races at the weekend, of course, and you want to try and maximise your points in each race, but also for a championship challenge, you need to maximise it throughout the whole year. So potentially sometimes thinking about maybe playing it safe. If things aren't rolling away, sometimes you have to take a slight points deduction to then be able to soldier on later on in either the round or the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I always think it's quite unique the way that Focus Cup do their qualifying, because they say there aren't that many championships. There might be somewhere you get an extra point for qualifying on pole in your class, or somewhere you might get 3 points for pole and 2 for second and 1 for third. But to actually get 30 points for pole position, the same amount as you get for winning the race, and it cascades all the way through, is, I think, in UK motorsport, I think that's quite unique. I don't think there's anybody else does it.
Yeah, it is unique, and also almost doubles down how important qualifying is, though, because we always say in pretty much every championship that qualifying is so important because it sets the grid for usually most of the races. Of course, if you've got a reverse grid race, that's different, but that, it's so much easier to have a good weekend with high scoring points or race wins starting from the front of the grid. But then on top of that, you get extra points for qualifying well or lack of points for qualifying badly.
I love the Focus Cup because they do it differently. They're diesel cars, which is different. They've got that points for qualifying. Yep. And even race 2, you're talking about reverse grid races. Well, race 2 is a reverse grid, but they're reversed in blocks of 6.
Yeah.
So 1st to 6th get reversed, 7th to 12th get reversed, 13th to 18th get reversed.
I actually really like that sort of reverse grid because it means everyone gets to experience the reverse grid. I mean, we see in, for example, the British Touring Car Championship, you've got as it top between 8th and 12th or whatever it is for it gets reversed. So therefore, if you're in the back end of the grid, you never really get to experience it. But then also the flip side, and then, for example, the GB3 and GB4 Championships, you've got a full grid reversal, which means that it's full chaos. Then you end up with everyone coming together in the middle with this little groups of 6, did you say? Groups of 6 getting reversed. You're still getting a reverse grid experience because you are still having to pass cars which in theory are slightly slower than you, but it's not like you've got this, for example, the slowest car in first. You're still racing with cars that are generally more like your sort of speed.
Yeah, I just like it. I just think it's different and it works, and for the likes of Simon Walton and the team there that are behind the Focus Cup, and all of the supporters of the Focus Cup, and you can see the amount of different companies that support it and supply component parts to it, because largely the cars are liveried in their particular company logos, so they do it very differently. But for me, it's been a good addition to UK motorsport, and it, it's a cheap way again of going motor racing because it's a fixed price for the weekend. So contact them for details, but you get a fixed price for the weekend, and yes, if you damage the car, you've got to pay for that on top. But they offer insurance things there, or I don't think it's called insurance. It's called
for insurance purposes. It's not called insurance.
Yes,
it's a damage repair scheme, or
damage repair scheme, or damage repair waiver, or something.
I think
isn't it?
So it works in the same way as an insurance, but it means that if you want to go racing, you don't have bags and unlimited bottomless pit of money, but you want to get the racing experience on a budget, then the Focus Cup is one of the best options for you, and it means that you can budget for it a lot more easily. Yeah,
it's a cost for the weekend that covers the tyres, the car, the hospitality that they give you, track time, qualifying, the racing. It even includes testing as well on the day prior. So it is a full-in package. So it's a very Not that there's many affordable ways to go motor racing, because it's always going to be expensive, but it is one of the cheaper ways to go racing.
It is. And also, we mentioned at the previous time at Donington Park, but the Focus Cup also offers you a slightly discounted rate for your first round in the Focus Cup for each season. So for most drivers, it'll be the first round, but if you fancy having a go, you can get a discount to just effectively try a race weekend out as well. So an even more affordable way to get into racing.
But what's the piggy bank looking like at home at the moment, Piers? Is there enough?
At the moment, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be joining a Focus Cup anytime shortly.
If you ask Santa nicely,
maybe I'll ask my mum and see what she says.
Bank of mum and dad.
I don't know how I can commentate on the race while being in it though, Mark. That's the issue.
You should try it, multitasking.
Oh yeah, multitasking.
Yeah, I'm no good at it. Sally keeps telling me at home.
And yet here you are commentating and also trying to get me a drive. So you can do it.
So there we go. We'll wait and see. I don't think we're going to have that much longer behind the safety car, because we've seen Sean Reynolds' car now has been extracted out of the gravel trap. I think the tyres that were there are almost put into position. So the safety car might peel its way into the pit lane before too much longer.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to do one more lap. I can still see one of those, what did you call them? The machines.
I call them telehandlers. Because
yes.
at Donington they're green, here they're yellow. And whilst yellow ones are more prevalent,
yes,
JCBs, other companies do make them. So telehandlers is a nice word. It's PC, isn't it? It works.
Yeah, rather than picker-upper, as I would probably call it. But there's still a picker-upper on circuit, sorting the barriers out, making sure that we're good to go. Hopefully not too much longer.
So yeah, you're right. One more lap behind the safety car. Safety car lights are still on as it heads over the start-finish line. There is the Mintex liveried car. I say they're all liveried largely in terms of the components that these cars are built from. But there is the Mintex liveried car of Sarah Hall at the tail end of the field.
Another thing that is really good about the series is the fact that you've got all these different awesome liveries, and I think whoever graphic designs them, and they all look different. There's not two cars. It makes our job after the console so much easier. Yeah. Rather than 3 or 4 cars looking identical with a different fleck of a wheel paint that's different. We can definitely pick out who's who, and also it's cool to see all the different supporters, as you mentioned, supporting the series, either sponsoring cars or providing parts or whatever.
It's a good way to work ever more in conjunction with the people that are behind the championship and supplying those controlled parts in the vast majority of cases. So we have got the telehandler, as I would rather call it, or the picker-upper, out of harm's way, I think now, Piers.
Yes, it has picker-uppered what it needs to picker up, and now it's hopefully means that this time...
no, it's not.
Still picking up.
It's picking up tyres now. It's sorted the car out.
Yeah.
So ideally what we need is, I mean, there's still time, isn't there? Because the safety car is only just turning onto the Grand Prix loop. There it is, behind.
Could be a green-white checker here.
And let's hope not.
Yes, no official green-white checkers. But the good thing about that incident is that there's no damage effectively to the barrier. It's just rearranging effectively here. Of course, we have the tyres which are there to absorb the impact, and then behind the tyres you have the more sturdy barrier, so if there is a big enough incident, that can cause damage to the barriers. But that's the whole point. That's what they're there for. They're to absorb energy, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they do a very good job of doing exactly that. Well, the safety car, probably the latest call. I mean, the good thing is that the telehandler hasn't got far to go out of the gravel trap to get itself behind the barriers and out of harm's way. So almost, I would say, Westfield, Dingledale would probably be about the latest that JCB could be out of harm's way. If it's not behind the barriers from there'd be another lap behind the safety car, which would be less than ideal.
It looks like the safety car's going very slowly, actually, so they're probably under instruction to slow the pack down because they reckon they might be able to get going fairly shortly, as there is another vehicle still on circuit just to the left of the timing screen there, as well as the telehandler. I've taken your terminology up there, Mark. I think I'll use that going forward. And hopefully that safety car is going slowly to try and allow the pack to get going this time around, which would then leave us 2 or 3 flying laps, probably 2 flying laps.
Yep, so let's hope that we can get the final course vehicle clear. The lights are still on the safety car for the moment. A little bit of weaving still being done to try and maintain tyre temperature in their control Nankang tyres that they all run. That is the tyre that is mandatory for fitment in the Focus Cup, Nankang NS2R.
Yep.
Lap behind safety car.
It's going to be
really tight, isn't it?
It's going to be tight. It looks like the safety car lights are still on as it stands, but they could come off almost any moment. The final vehicles are removing themselves swiftly from the circuit, so it's absolutely fingers crossed get going, because that would allow us 2 racing laps.
Yeah, it's just about clear now. Lights have gone off on the safety car, so I think by the skin of our teeth we are going to squeeze in an extra racing lap or 2 maybe with this one. It's going to be tight as to how many we'll get in. Really depends how quickly we try and get things back underway. John Baker's gone for it already. Lewis Clark is trying to follow him. A little bit slower away though was Ian Mitchell in 3rd position, and Ian Mitchell was still coming under pressure from Simon Waugh, who's there in 4th place. But it's a good restart from both front row men who are pushing each other over the start finish line. The blue car, John Baker, leads the way as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend with 90 seconds to go.
Yes, unfortunately the 5th place car number 2 is the 5th place car's dropped off quite a long way of the safety car restarts, eventually not thinking they were going to go this time and caught napping a little bit, but at the front absolutely not getting caught napping is the number 9 in 2nd place of Clark.
Yep, so Lewis Clark with that renumbered car, we're expecting to come out as car number 17, but I think there must have been a problem with his car that he was looking to try and utilise, so he's jumped into the car that I think was originally allocated for the man behind the championship, Simon Walton. So he is there in 2nd place. Now the top 2 had got away, but all of a sudden a good restart from Ian Mitchell means good first couple of corners. He's right back with them and is bringing the newly liveried car of Simon Waugh right into the mix as well. Simon Waugh, who used to race in the pickup truck championship for another different manufacturer that we had in the UK, diesel engine pickups, wasn't it, as well, if memory serves us correct, the SsangYong Challenge or something a couple of seasons ago.
A diesel racing veteran, as we see a Slipstream having a look into Hawthorne's not going to get it done. Oh, is he? It looks like he's got the leader Baker's gone slightly wide on the entry, maybe looking forward to getting a good exit, but that narrow entry from Clark is leaving him vulnerable to Mitchell.
It is, yeah, so he compromises exit speed, which means that Ian Mitchell looks to try and weave his way through and past one way and the other. Didn't quite work, so they tumble downhill through Dingledale and start to climb up towards the blind entry right-hander at Sheen Curve, the corner that you said you absolutely love. You've got to hook so much of that curve up on the inside. You miss the apex, you're going to run wide and onto the grass and into the gravel if you're not careful, but you get that right, it's a brilliant corner when you get it right.
It just feels so good. There's something about it, you feel like you can carry more and more and more speed into the corner as you go faster and faster, and with it being slightly uphill through the apex, it feels like you can go so much speed, but then the track comes up very close and very quickly on the exit of the corner with no runoff really to speak of.
But they all master that beautifully. Now that this squabble is on for 2nd and 3rd place, it's just allowing John Baker to pull away a little bit, but the checker flag does come out that time through as the clock has just ticked to 0, and John Baker hangs on to the win by half a second in the end from Lewis Clark in 2nd place, and Ian Mitchell in 3rd place on the last lap set the fastest lap of the race with a 1:53.485. So he was pushing hard to try and get a further step up on the podium, but couldn't quite muster it in the end.
And remind us, are there points for fastest lap in this championship, Mark?
Now you're asking, and the answer to that is yes, there are an extra 5 championship points for the fastest lap.
He'll be very happy with that, so that's almost effectively giving him 2nd most points, is it? for that one.
Yeah, so
just about.
It will be, yeah, just about. It will give him enough, more points than the person in second got. Quick confirmation then of the results for that first race in the Focus Cup here at Brands Hatch this weekend, round 3 of the championship. The win went the way of John Baker, who claimed the win. Hopefully the graphics will come up. There we go. John Baker claims the win. Second place was Lewis Clark, and third was Ian Mitchell. It was Simon Wall in fourth place. The Irish lady joining us for the championship, Nicole Drought was there in fifth place, and sixth place went the way of Simon Watts. Seventh place was number 34. That is the car of Greg Saunders. Eighth place was Mark McCann. Ninth place was Gary Mitchell, and Luke Scrubby off the back of the field finished in 10th position. Outside of the top 10, then next up was Rob Stark, who was there in 11th place. Ian Graham was 12th. Abby Waltons was 13th. And the last of the finishes in 14th place was number 21 car of Sarah Hall. For poor old Sean Reynolds, third in the championship. He will pick up just 1 point as a result of being a retiree. That's it from Piers and I. Focus Cup race number 1, but race number 2 will be back with you later on this afternoon. Thanks for joining us from Brands Hatch. For the moment, goodbye.